Hello, everyone. Happy Halloween. Happy Dia de los Muertos. Happy All Saints Day. And a joyous Sawe to everyone who is celebrating tonight. We have an extra special guest. It is Emma Wade, our friend and Michael Chekhov colleague, who's going to be joining us to talk about some puppetry, which is awesome. If you don't know me, my name is Jaina Alexander, and I am one half of the founding artistic director team here at Thumbprint Studios.
Hello, everyone. If you don't know me, I am April Sigman-Marx, the other half of that team.
Emma is going to be talking to us about breathing life into your stuff for creation in isolation. Emma Wade is an actor, puppeteer, teacher, and director based in the Northeast. She is trained closely under the mentorship of Lenard Petit in New York City, developing in-depth explorations of Michael Chekhov Technique for actors. Her work with Chekhov continues to grow and to cultivate her own offerings as a teacher and performer. Before this mentorship in NYC, Emma was primarily working with puppetry. She's had professional experiences with puppetry legends such as Bread and Puppet Theater, Ralph Lee, and Basil Twist. So welcome, Emma Wade. Oh, there she is.
There.
Hey,
Welcome.
coming into you with some Halloween cheer, Samhain cheer.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for saying yes.
Yeah.
So, our icebreaker question for today, what is your current obsession?
Good question. I don't feel like I'm totally obsessed with anything right now, but I have been deeply interested in wood-fired saunas.
Oh,
And
yes.
I was building one this spring with my partner during COVID, and we built a sauna in a trailer.
Wow.
Amazing.
That's awesome. Can I come visit you?
Yes. Yes.
Like
Have you had
tomorrow?
experience building before? Like carpentry or anything?
I'm not the most skilled carpenter, but I can take direction.
Excellent. Yeah, that was not the answer that I was expecting, but
Way better.
yes, way better. Way better than anything that I could think of. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yeah, cool.
But actually, investigating into what is heat therapy, and what does a sauna is a 1,000-year-old tradition, and what's it about? There's not that much medical literature. You feel good when you come out of it, and there's this idea that you sweat out toxins. But anyways, there's belief that it helps with viruses, with and other diseases that are mysterious, like Lyme's disease.
Mm-hmm. That is fascinating. Now I must Google all the things tonight. I'm just going to be like, wood saunas.
Yeah. Follow-up tea, wood saunas with
Right.
Emma Wade.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to make it's in a trailer, right? So we were joking that the end opens up and it should be a traveling sauna and puppet theater.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yes. Yes. So when you take that road tripping, please let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Track
speaking
and sauna puppets.
Yes. So speaking of puppets, tell us about your journey that brought you to puppetry.
Sure. Well, it's, I was around puppets quite a bit as a kid. My mother is an early educator and Montessori teacher. And she incorporated a lot of art into her. She had a private preschool and kindergarten. So in that sense, I was around a lot of creating and making of puppets for children in very kind of quick, organic fashions. You know, what's it going to be today? Didn't know that was going to be part of my adulthood. But through, I guess, sort of entering adulthood, I really wanted to pursue performing arts. You know, I knew that was just something that's been with me since I was a little kid. Didn't know how to do that. I wasn't the kind of person that at 18 went to go do conservatory in New York City, or I really had too many interests, and I think it takes a certain kind of focused person to go do that. And so I was involved in theater whenever I could, and also making stuff. And leaving undergrad, I had a costume design professor, Kiki Smith, at Smith College. She's wonderful. And she said, "Emma, what are you doing after undergrad?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't really know. I've got, how it can be." And she said, "How about puppets?" Very seriously. And she gave me some names of people she knew in the field. And but she planted that seed where I was very interested in gesture, which has also played out in my life in ways I didn't expect. So physical theater, gesture, and so puppetry has a lot of gesture and physicality. It can anyways. And there's a making element. And so then I went about looking for an apprenticeship and studied some specific ideas about speech and gesture for puppets. And then it kind of went from there. In New York City, there's a lot of different niche puppetry scenes. And so I'm thankful to have been able to dabble a bit in different scenes. Yeah.
Wow.
And I guess then there's just, what then puppetry can be very self-generative. So I think that has been a thread for me too, of, in theory anyways, you can just make, put it together, and you don't necessarily need a big production.
Is that something that you feel like is threading through into your other performance work, this idea of it being self-generative? And are there any other aspects that you're finding that you've learned or gained from your work with objects that you're now using in your body? Because I think we usually think about it the other way around, right? Like it's an extension of your body, but like, does it ever work backwards?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so I was introduced to Michael Chekhov Technique after being in a pretty intensive study of puppetry. And I recognized that Michael Chekhov Technique offers a lot of ideas for the actor that I was doing with puppets, but for the actor in imaginary circumstances, which you might kind of have an idea of what I'm saying if you studied Chekhov Technique. If not, you might have no idea what I'm talking about. But yeah. So let's say a puppet, right, is the sort of basic idea is that you animate the inanimate. There's some kind of animating the inanimate relationship. And there's different ways to go about it. And there's if you could split it up into two schools, there's probably the people that are coming from a fine arts background, and they come to puppetry from this very visual art kind of experience. And then the other is a performing artist who is in their body and working in a very different way. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at puppetry there, you'll really get a whole spectrum there. And I come from the physicality, so I'm trying to answer your question, April, and it's taking me around.
But, this is the point. So, to hear right. All of that.
Okay, we have an object. I've got a teacup because we're having tea time.
Yes.
And so here's the object, and I have a task to animate it. There's lots of ways to do this, but what I want to point out is that there's a relationship always between you and the object. Mm-hmm. And there's many ways of playing with this relationship. And so I experienced, for example, if you wear a puppet and the body is much larger than your body, like say a 12-foot puppet on your back, that you, at least what I developed, not on my own, but what one needed to do was to feel themselves to be 12 foot tall. Even though I personally wasn't the puppet, I still had to send myself up to the head of the puppet energetically, such that I had some understanding of it and control. And the same thing, you'd have really big arms, and you'd have a pole coming down from the arm, and you'd be many feet below, and you have to control this kind of, just stiff arm and bring it to life. So there's always this space and relationship to the thing that you need to animate. And I found myself also, with help of my mentors, like sending a part of myself to the puppet, or merging with where the image of the puppet was in space. And then things just kind of open up. It's incredible. And then you have a relationship that you can play with. So sometimes you are manipulating the object, and at other times it's almost like it's telling you what to do. Wow. And so those kinds of principles have followed me into, I think, all of my creative work. And Michael Chekhov Technique works with centers in the body or in the space, and you often create a relationship, if you know it or not, to an image or within yourself or without yourself. And so it was immediately made sense to me. It was like, oh, yeah, I can work with this.
It makes sense that you connect to Chekhov, because what you're describing it feels very similar to some of the principles of the Chekhov work.
Yeah. I was, so the puppeteer that I worked with after undergrad specializes in Goethean color theory and speech gestures from German philosopher Rudolf Steiner, who Michael Chekhov was quite familiar with and was inspired by. So I didn't even know it, but there was a little pathway laid out for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's excellent. So what resources would you recommend to someone who is sort of new to these ideas that would want to explore something like this?
Wants to explore what I'm talking about right now, or
no, just puppetry in general.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of different kinds of puppetry, like I already alluded to, but I would look for for puppetry around you and see what's in your community. You might be surprised. There might be even just a little puppet company. In Chicago, there are some great companies, and Chicago hosts the International Puppetry Festival, I think, semi-regularly. The best thing is right to get interested in a particular company or person's work, and then that's a point of inspiration. Otherwise, there are pretty simple things that one can do just to start to play around. If you're playing with video, for example, you could perhaps something like tabletop puppetry is a very easy place to start. And that's literally the idea that you have a surface, a table surface, and you put things on the surface and you move them around. And your hand can be seen, it's no problem. And you can tell a little story. But then, there's to making paper mache puppets or marionettes, and things can get very complicated quickly. And you need many people to manipulate a little being.
Yeah. So we're all isolated right now. So we don't have the opportunity to have multiple people, or maybe the resources that we would previously. Have you been doing any exploration in isolation, and like what are you finding in that kind of work?
Yeah. Well, in terms of straight puppetry, I've been finding that the world of animation is pretty useful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where that line is. I mean, it's interesting. There's puppet film, but in isolation, it's sort of like you have to do some editing maybe, and it quickly kind of pulls from other fields. But really, in recent years, a lot of my energy has been working with actors. Mm-hmm. So I think about, or I pull in puppetry into acting. And it's not something I've really talked out loud about with people. So this is maybe a little unveiling.
Ooh, y'all heard it first. This is exclusive.
But so there are a couple of things I've noticed as I've been thinking and playing with people on virtual platforms, and this platform of a video conference. And so here's one of them. One of them is that this image of yourself you're looking at, if you're in a Zoom call, for anyone listening, I guess you're not looking at yourself because you're enjoying this on Facebook. But you imagine yourself in a Zoom call or a video conference, and most of the time you're looking at yourself unless you put a selfie mode on, or at least your image is always in your eyesight, your periphery. And this is a very curious thing. We don't have that in film or straight theater. It's a little unusual unless you're self-taping yourself. And so anyways, so I've been playing with your image on the screen as a puppet.
Interesting.
Fascinating.
So
I hate to look at myself. So to maybe think of it as a puppet, do you find that that's helpful for the psyche, or is that something else?
I think it's helpful for more than the psyche.
Okay.
I think it's in Michael Chekhov Technique, there's this idea that perhaps an actor has an ideal center, and that is placed in like the middle of the human being. I know you guys know this, but I don't know who's listening. At the the center of the being, or, our crossroads. And I find that that's where I want to be for whatever character I'm playing. I want to have some idea of myself in space. And if I am looking at myself in the screen and see myself over there, it's very disorienting. It puts me out of my body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or could.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is one of the ideas, is that if I take a moment and find myself in my body and in the space, and we're not at character yet, but you need some space to let the character in the room and actually be in reality, in real room. But the fact is that this is your medium, and this is the image that everyone's seeing, right? So I first establish where I'm in space, and then I just want to have a sense. You guys could try this. Okay. If you can sit there for a moment, disengage from the screen by turning or whatever you need to do. Can you disengage from the screen? Disengage from your image on the screen, and really find yourself just in your space. A human being. And then in your periphery, just have a sense that there's this image on the screen. Just that there's an image on the screen. Good. And maybe have a recognition that it has a likeness to you, this image on the screen. And go ahead and turn your head from the right to the left with this relationship. If you can maintain some feeling of the image and what the image is doing as you are moving your head. Good, let that go. Now, look at the screen. And similarly, I'm going to ask you to just put your head down and up. And the question is, can we do this? So we're going to move our head down and up, but your movement and your space in reality is going to manipulate the image. So go ahead and just move in the frame a little bit. And know that you're manipulating it. Yeah, you could play even more, perhaps with the tip of your nose. It says, oh, can you see me?
Welcome back.
Thank you. Somebody was calling me. Good. So you can imagine that if you develop this relationship, you could carve into the image on the screen. You could push it. You could tickle it. and so on. But the idea is that it becomes another entity in a way. It becomes the character, but like a puppeteer, it's a little bit away from you.
Yeah.
But still like in yourself.
Yeah.
Like distinctly connecting to what's happening physically and then seeing the reaction, like seeing how that physical manipulation in my body is coming out on screen versus I'm in the screen.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's also like it can turn the screen into your canvas.
Mm.
And in that way, it is more of a friend, perhaps, or it's, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, one other thought is that you still have to be careful of it kind of taking you away, the screen. I was noticing even in this close stuff, so that know that you can always be here. You can always be here. And, keep some idea of what's going on there, but you can be here. And, if you ever feel lost, I think that's an issue. If you ever feel taken by the screen, by virtual space, that is, that's a problem for the artist.
Yeah. Well, that was fascinating.
Wow.
And now I'm going to be distracted in every meeting that I am ever going to be in. I'm going to be like, oh, my puppet is there, which I love.
Wow. And I feel like that thought about losing yourself in the screen and how that's a problem for artists, that almost feels like stealing your muse.
Something like that, yeah.
And no wonder these are so draining, right? No wonder being on Zoom is so draining if you're constantly being stolen by the screen.
Yeah. Yeah. I had an uncle, I think he was joking, but it was kind of or I still have an uncle, but he he scared me as a kid and said that I couldn't take a picture of him because it would take a little piece of his soul. I was terrified.
Wow. So is Zoom the underworld?
Something to think about.
I mean, like now I feel like what does that mean?
We've now gone from puppetry to April having an existential crisis about Zoom.
I'm curious, what was your experience, you two, in doing this little thing?
It's kind of like doing like a mirror exercise that you would do in like clowning, but it feels a little more disconnected. Like in a way, right? Because we're used to seeing ourselves in mirrors, so we're used to our reflection. But with this sort of being like a live film, it feels a little bit more like unusual, even though we've been living here for however long it's been at this point. Time is a construct. So, yeah.
Did it feel helpful to you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, now that in every Zoom meeting, I think that there's going to be this little part of me that's just going to be like, there's my puppet. Which, I think if I'm bored would be really fun,
Well, particularly rehearsals. Hey, like if you're rehearsing a piece and everyone's just like this or whatever, you got to do something.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but I mean, it definitely gets you thinking about how we experience our own image.
Yeah, I feel like I felt a moment where it was almost like looking at a virtual 3D puppet, that I could almost feel that this image was completely separate from me. And that although I was playing with it, that we weren't one and the same. We were two different entities somehow, like somehow connected, but like also with some separation, which was, it also felt like dropping from my head into my body, because oftentimes I feel like when you're in Zoom, you're like looking and going, how do I look? How do I look? Which is a very like intellectual place to be versus, what's happening with this movement, and am I playing with this puppet, which just feels like a much more visceral place to live.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as performing artists and teachers, I'm sure like one of the biggest thing is finding our body and our mind in the same thing. And it's still true on Zoom. We got to find our body, so don't let it be taken away.
Don't let Zoom steal it.
That's right.
One piece at a time.
Yeah. Wow, this has been a delight.
Yes, absolutely delightful.
Now I have so many thoughts and ideas, and I'm like, Dante's Inferno, Zoom? Maybe this is something we need to explore.
Maybe.
Fascinating.
Yeah. If it's something that's helpful to people, I'm open to organizing something if there's interest out there. No.
So you heard her, all of you watching. If you have interest, comment below, and
That's
then
right.
we'll start taking note of that and see what we can work out.
Yeah, absolutely. So if there is one thing that everybody could leave with tonight, what would that be?
One thing. Well, I guess per the title, are we like running out of time? Yeah.
We have as much time as we need.
For the title, there's this idea of isolation. And I think this is something we need to take very seriously. And in isolation, what kind of person are you? Have you found that out in this time? Even if you have a partner, or you're living with roommates, take note of what isolation is for you. And are you able to work in it? And what do you need to be able to work in it? And or do you really need to find ways to work with other people, even in these times? But I really mean, like, look at isolation and what it's done to you and your creative inspirations, your creative individuality. And if you're struggling, that's okay. You're not alone. And I guess I offer from this little perspective of puppetry that there's a lot of life in everything, even though in our materialistic era, technically we may not see life in things, we can still be in relation. There's still life that has gone into the creation of everything around us. And then I think because of that, we have a capacity as alive humans to give a little bit of that life to the stuff around us. So we did that with our image on the screen, and you can do that with anything. You can do that if you're, play around with the stuff in your space while in isolation and see if you can just kind of have a sense for life, that there's something alive in your space. It could be in the air. It could be in an object. It could be in the space behind your ears. Just see if you can have a sense for life in your space, and I hope that that is helpful to you, whoever's out there.
Yeah.
And to you, Jaina and April.
Thank you so much, Emma.
Yeah.
Those are excellent things to reflect on and utilize. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this idea that even though you're in isolation, you're not alone, and that the reciprocal nature of you giving to your space and your space giving to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's creativity has a lot of, it can be a mysterious thing. Like, I don't know how to be creative, but I think it has something to do with life and recognizing life in things. And then you can have feelings about it, or you can have a relationship to it, or just have a sense for its place. Then you got something to work with.
Well, thank you so much for that. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
It's been hugely delightful, and I have all the things to saunas. Who knew? So now it is shameless plug moment. On Monday, November 2nd, from 6:30 to 8 p.m., we will have our November, right? Yes. November. Yes. Thumbprint Reads and Listens. We're going to be discussing Zomo the Rabbit, a hip-hop youth play. We'll be joined by the hip-hop artist D-Nick, the Microphone Misfit, who will be reading from the play, as well as assisting us with any information about hip-hop that we may need. So that's on Monday. And then Tuesday is election day. So please don't forget to vote. I did it today, wearing my RBG pearls today. So everyone have an excellent evening, and we hope to see you next week. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, until next time.
Thank you, Jaina and April.
Thank you,
for having
Emma.
me. Good to see you guys.